Ready for some companion planting talk? Yeah. Yeah, in our efforts to plan a garden for next year, one of the subjects that we need to broach upon is absolutely companion planting, because this will tell us how and when and where we're going to plant certain things. So I'm going to kind of go over my method. This isn't going to be a guide to companion planting because it would take 5 hours to go through it, but I'll let you know what has worked for me in my garden. Before we get too far into this, you will see that I do a lot of monocropping in my garden. For instance, a full bed of Brussels sprouts, a full bed of cabbage, but that's for this time of year, and that will change. First of all, welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead, everybody. I am Ben. My name is not Sandy, it is Ben, and I am in coastal North Carolina. It is fall and is November, and we may actually get some rain any minute now. So I'm trying to race because I don't know how to act because we haven't had rain in 8 weeks. So you can see a lot of this is, you know, monocrop, kind of. Actually, this is going to be a really good example here. And then not so much. We really only have three of our beds are monocropped right now. You can see this one has a variety. We've got pak choi, we've got mustard, we've got kale. We had lettuce and it all bolted. And so I kind of had an idea today. Figured that since the weather is going to be stupid, I'm going to be stupid. And I knew we may get some rain today, so I actually went ahead and direct sowed some more lettuce just to kind of see what would happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but sacrifice a couple seeds, right? I'm here for the ride, baby. You know what I'm saying? As you start looking out for your plan, if you're following this series at all, we've done a variety of things, but what we've talked about is crop rotation. And so we rotate our crops, we've got that, and then we want to talk about companion planting. And we can companion plant a number of ways within our garden, but it's really important to understand a few things. So the first thing is companion planting is kind of difficult. The second thing is companion planting is not what you think it is. I'm telling you, it's not what you think it is. And this is why. I read a study, and we all know, well, maybe we don't, but if you don't, you're about to know, that the general saying is if you plant marigolds with tomatoes, it'll bring beneficial insects, and then it'll help the tomatoes, right? So I was reading something, and it said that in order for that to work, you'd have to have a field of marigolds next to your tomato plants. And that was really eye-opening for me, because every year I planted a marigold, I sacrificed 1 square foot in my garden, which isn't much, for marigold. And I'm not against it. I haven't done it since, and I'm not really against it, but I don't think it really does what we think it does. That was depressing to me, because that was one of the things that I lived by, absolutely lived by. And it made it was an eye-opener to me, because what I realized is not everything is as it appears to be. So, I mean, I planted marigolds with tomatoes for many years, did fine. Planted tomatoes without marigolds for a few years, did just as fine. Whatever. So I do like having flowers in the garden, and I do enjoy marigolds, so there is that. But, you know, as we think about companion planting and stuff like that, it's something to think about. So companion planting has a couple of effects. One is beneficial insects. 2 is the non-competing food sources, so they don't necessarily need the same food. Some plants will need more than others. Some plants will give more than others. I don't have any examples of the last one, but I'll show you the idea behind it. For instance, on this trellis over here, if we come over here, we'll put peas on it. So peas are a nitrogen fixer. They will put nitrogen back into the soil. That being said, you need to understand that that nitrogen is not available until those roots will rot away into the soil. So it's not necessarily dropping that nitrogen right away, but it is making it available in the future. So we can plan for the peas to go there, and then we can put corn or onions or something that's really high nitrogen. And really everything out here right now This whole bed's nitrogen hungry, that bed, that bed, that bed, and that bed over there. The only things that aren't very nitrogen hungry is this bed right here, which is not companion planted, okay? Because we have radishes and we have turnips. Both of those are root crops, meaning they have the same desires for nutrients. So that wouldn't be the best. What would work out better would be if we had our Brussels sprouts with our radishes, because they're non-competing food sources. Just not drinking the sauce. So we don't really do that. We do some companions as far as like we'll plant our tomatoes and peppers together. This year we didn't actually. I went and I tried to monocrop tomatoes because it tends to be easier for me, because I have a whole bed of Brussels sprouts and I know that's there. If I had a whole bed of tomatoes and I knew it was there, but it wasn't really easy to work on. So I'm gonna revert back. And the first year I planted tomatoes and peppers together was the best tomato year I ever had, and pepper year. They really gave each other, whatever it did great. And so I had read that they were great companions, and then I found another website that said they're not, because they're both in the nightshade family. So I was like, hold up, what's going on? And we looked at it and I said, you know what, they're in the same family, and this kind of rang true with me, is why don't I plant, my cat just scared the crap out of me, why don't I plant family with family? So keep my nightshades together, keep my brassicas together, stuff like that, and see how that works. And that's actually worked out really well for me and has simplified my growing process. Examples of that would be, we're gonna put our garlic right here, and typically what we've done, we're not planting garlic or onions this year, but we would plant our garlic and our onions in the same bed, and they seem to play well, very well together. Now, with that understanding, kind of gonna get into a companion, and it's just a lot like the peas, but it's the following planting that's the companion, if that makes any sense at all. For me, because the onions I pull out of my garden in June, but I've already got my tomatoes planted. But the onions, if we put them in this bed and then we put our tomatoes in there, it helps keep all of the pests away from it. And so we can benefit from that for a little while. But if we have a whole bed of onions here and a tomato here, you can kind of see where I'm going with this, because it's the scent of the onion that it releases that will help deter pests from it. So we kind of use that to our advantage. And so what we do is we try to plan out our garden in that manner. We're going to weave a web here throughout these whole series for both the seed starting and the garden planning series. But the web here becomes, if we put our garlic here, and let's just say I was doing onions, and my onions in here, and we put our tomatoes here, and then the next year, and then in the fall, we would put our onions back here, and then our tomatoes here. You can see how we're kind of building this plan out. And so we have a very nice laid out plan for our garden beds. And then putting the peppers in the bed with it will help us to continue that. And so we don't ever have to really think about what are we planting with. All we really have to think about is, we like this combination, we like the way it produces, where is it going next? So year after year, what you'll see in my garden is you will see the same combinations of plants planted together, and that's how I like to do it. Now, if I come over here to this bed, then this massive Seminole pumpkin, which is starting to go away finally, we've got cabbages and we've got broccoli in here, and apparently we've got this too. This is a sweet potato that we've got growing from somewhere, so there's that. But these are definitely not considered companions, but they are both brassicas, meaning they have the same fertilization needs, which makes it so much easier for me, because all I need to do is focus on fertilizing these the same way. We're getting things in beds that need competing fertilization, especially this time of year with your nitrogens and stuff like that. It can be very complicated. So I know that if I needed to push more growth to this, I could feed just nitrogen here instead of pushing it through my irrigation system and going all the way across to all of it. Or I could go in and put a granular in there and then really get that going. So, you know, you can separate your beds, because invariably, let's say we had our broccoli and our turnips together. So this is our turnip patch here. If we had our broccoli here, our turnips here, and we wanted to give nitrogen here, and we put nitrogen just here in this bed, on this row, but then we had our turnips here, that nitrogen will still get over here and cause and hinder our root growth instead of and give us more leaf growth. So we don't really want to do that, because that nitrogen, just because you put it on the soil, doesn't stay in that exact same spot. It'll move. It can wash over. The roots underground and the surface roots underneath are kind of coming across, and they can feed on it a little bit more. It's not exactly what we want. So we keep all those things together, and just knowing that this is my root bed, right? This is my greens bed. That's my broccoli bed. That's my Brussels sprout bed. And we can do things like that. Now, I have found some things work well for monocropping and some things don't. You know, we went over the tomatoes. I even did peppers monocrop this year, and it didn't really work out for me because there was no variation in the size of the plant. I had great plants, but because they were all the same size, we had issues with shading and stuff like that and overgrowing. So we could do more spacing, but truth be told, it's almost easier to come out here and say tomatoes in the back, peppers in the front, because my sunlight comes, the bulk of it will come from this direction. So we know that those plants in the front will be smaller, they'll get more sun, but the tomatoes in the back won't. The fertilization needs are the same, the growth patterns, albeit the peppers are smaller, they're about the same. What is a companion planting? That's the question here. And I have an argument for a companion planting is what you grow, the combinations you grow that work the best for you. I mean, if we're adding fertilizer, we're not really draining too much out. We can control that aspect of it. As far as the pest goes, if you're treating for pests and you're using, you know, organic pesticides or something like that, if you would like to, you're kind of eliminating that factor as well. And not to mention, when we're in this garden bed here, let me get you up top. When we're in this garden bed here, in this area, everything is so close. There's only 2 feet in between each bed. So why can't an insect, a beneficial insect from here, fly 2 feet over from here?